Raider Nation, what's up? Jesse Merrick here, coming to you from the field here at Gillette Stadium, where the Raiders just walked away with a comeback victory in Week 1 of the NFL season over the New England Patriots. As we dive into this game, we got to begin and end with Geno Smith. Yeah, not too bad for him in this game, huh? He actually comes out and sets the franchise record for passing yards in a debut by a Raiders quarterback. Goes for 362 yards, 24 of 34 for a touchdown and an interception. Now, let's start talking about the offense first. Obviously, things were not pretty at first for the Raiders, and I'm going to keep looking down here because I got my computer rolling. Want to make sure we don't have any audio issues. We did before with our previous recording, so working out some of the kinks here on the road for Week 1. But anyway, guys, let me tell you about the offense, all right? Things weren't looking great. They come out that first drive. I thought things were looking really good. The opening script of this game for Chip Kelly was a solid one. It was very clear they wanted to come out and establish the run. The offensive line opened some nice holes for Ashton Jeanty. He made some good reads and was looking really good. Obviously, as the game wore on, that was a different story for him. But overall, the opening script was great. We talked a ton about Trey Tucker throughout training camp. I got to the point where I was asking you guys if you were tired of hearing about Trey Tucker anymore, because of how much I brought him up. He goes and flashes there, comes away with the first touchdown catch of the season for the Raiders, the first touchdown catch of Geno Smith's career as a quarterback as well. So that's pretty cool for Trey Tucker. Look, I think in that one, it was one of those deals where the corner got caught looking in the backfield, had bad eyes, and Trey Tucker just beat him. You know what I mean? Great throw by Geno, too, in the back of the end zone to keep it within play for Trey. And then the Raiders go up 7-0. And then, obviously, things got a little wonky on offense there after that. Geno and them, goes and throws the interception. Not what you quite want to see. I think there is a difference between trusting your arm and throwing into some dicey situations. We saw him kind of toe that line at times throughout this game, but it's very clear that this is a guy that's a vet in this league, trusts his arm, and really trusts the guys that he has on offense in his team too. So I think that's something we're going to see. There's going to be some good, some bad, but today it was a lot more good than it was bad. And there were plenty of those throws where he's sitting there and you hear about all the guys throughout training camp on the Raiders defense talking about sometimes there's these throws that Geno's going to make where you're just going to scratch your head or say, hey, there's nothing we could quite do about that. He did that a couple times today. There's a few in particular to Brock Bowers that we saw, that really stood out to me in that regard. And so we got to see a full game of Geno Smith. If you're a Raiders fan, you got to be really fired up with what you saw from him. Also, too, one thing that I did want to mention in this one, Geno Smith is a dude whose deep ball accuracy is really slept on. In this game, he had 7 completions of 20 yards or more. That's the second most in a game for him of his career. So this guy was letting it rip downfield. Again, real accurate in the passing game, the deep passing game. And I don't think that's something that he gets enough credit for as a quarterback in the NFL in general. But that's definitely going to be something we're going to see these guys do. I wasn't expecting as many deep shots as we saw in this game, but it was really cool to be able to see them connect on a handful of those. Obviously, a bunch of those going to Brock Bowers, who had himself a day. He goes for 5 catches and 103 yards for the Raiders. So you've got to love that. In terms of his knee injury, we talked to Pete about it after the game, and Pete said that Brock actually wanted to go back into the game, but they held him out because they were kind of watching how the game was going, didn't want to test it. So I think it's one of those things where going forward, it bears watching, but probably nothing you really have to worry about because Brock felt he was ready to go back into the game. The trainers just said, hey, let's pump the brakes on this. Look at how the game is going. This is a long season. We want to make sure you're going to be ready to play for the long haul because, again, he is that dude going for 100 yards in his first game of season number 2. So it looks like, the encore season for Brock Bowers is already off to a great start. And doing that, going over the 100-yard mark with only 5 catches, that's impressive. And we saw him used in so many different ways. He was lined up in so many different spots throughout the formation for this offense. That was something we talked about. And that Chip had mentioned that he wants to see Brock used the way that he was back in college. So there's still so much more you're going to see out of Brock in the different looks and unique ways that they can use him. But again, he is just such a weapon when you do split him out wide and have these corners try and stop him because he gets to use that big body. But just overall, very impressed with Brock. The athleticism, so easy to see on the pass down the sideline as well, on the right sideline. I believe it was in the second quarter, might have been in the third quarter. Just an awesome play between Geno and Brock in that one. And so the connection between those two is very much alive. But one thing that really stood out to me, too, was the simple fact that, Geno was spreading it around. 7 different Raiders players caught a pass today. And we saw, obviously, Jakobi. We saw Brock in the mix. Those are 2 guys that are going to play well off of each other so much throughout the season. And Jakobi had himself a nice little day as well in his return to New England. The area of his game where he really stood out and flashed to me was in the play-action game, and in particular where he's threatening on that vertical stem and then just kind of curls it off to find the hole, the soft spot in the zone. So really impressed with that aspect of Jakobi's game, and he's a guy that just does so many different things for the Raiders. and lines up in so many different, looks and formations. Another thing we talked about was Dante Thornton Jr. What was the role going to look like for him? Obviously, Amari Cooper goes and retires, and we all thought that Amari was coming in and going to take a lot of snaps away from Dante Thornton. Well, look, he comes in, and there was one play where, it looked like what we saw towards the tail end of camp in terms of the deep ball connection, him maybe not quite trusting his speed or whatever it is, maybe not trusting his speed, because he obviously knows how fast he is, and we know that, but maybe not quite just trusting his technique is what I'm trying to say, as I'm stumbling over the words to spit that out. But like, he's looking too early instead of just putting that foot in the ground and running and letting his speed and athleticism take over. So later in the game, though, we saw that wasn't the case when he goes and catches that deep pass there at a real critical point for the Raiders, comes away with the first down. I think that's going to go a long way in helping the rapport between him and Geno going forward throughout the season. Pete talked about how big that was for them at that point of the game, and he said it really helped sway things for them, particularly on offense, to be able to go down there and score and keep this thing rolling. So I was impressed with what I did see out of Dante Thornton in the work that we saw from him there. And I think this is a good growing moment for him. We know Pete's not afraid to play the young guys. You go through and come away with that. What I did want to see, and I put this out on Twitter, I think it was late in the first half before they go kick that field goal. At one point, Dante was in one-on-one coverage. The safety was kind of shading inside, and Dante beat the guy, and Geno didn't even look over there. He was looking to the left side of the formation at something else. I forget who he ended up throwing to on that play. But I was like, oh, man, like if there was any time to test that deep connection, that would have been the spot. They obviously go back to it late in the game and connect. So that's a win for them in terms of his development. Another thing that really surprised me was Jack Besh. He comes in at a real critical point in this game, early on in the game, but on third down, and comes down with the catch and converts and moves the chains. The only reason I say that's surprising is not because Jack Besh isn't a good player. Like, we think he's a really good player. I think he's going to be used in a handful of different ways. It's just, what's that usage actually going to look like? And I didn't expect to see his first burn, which I believe was his first snaps, on that third down play. Comes down with third and long, comes down with the catch to move the chains. Was really impressed with that. He's a guy they do like. It's just one of those situations where you have Jakobi, the two of them in this offense, and I know people say that the games aren't similar, but in this offense, they play a very similar role. So I wasn't expecting to see a ton of usage from him. But again, shows the trust that this staff has in him to throw him in there early in the game in a third down situation where it's like, hey, this is still kind of like a clutch play. And Geno trusts him, throws it to him, and he comes down with it. So I'm excited to see what the future holds for Jack in terms of his development too, and how he kind of gets mixed into things. And I think the fact that Amari retires opens the door a little bit more for him. You obviously see the guys that they call up from the practice squad not getting any burn, and instead they turn to Jack, which is the way it should be because he was a second-round pick. I just think he's not necessarily getting the usage that you would like to see out of a second-round pick. But we've talked about that ad nauseum. Instead, let's talk about the guys that were out there consistently and were getting things done. Again, Geno was one that was just really impressing me overall throughout this game, especially in the second half as it wore on. Just showed that he is that veteran guy, showed that he's a really underrated dude and goes and does what he does. Pete said, like, after the game, he was like, I'm not surprised. Like, this is just what he's always gone and done. So I think if you're a Raiders fan, maybe you didn't quite know how to feel about Geno Smith entering this game. You've got to be happy now moving forward about what this means for Geno and this offense and the throws that you saw him make. Again, there's so many times when he's really just like threading that needle and making some throws where we're sitting up in the press box kind of shaking our head like, wow, or maybe like, hey, probably shouldn't have thrown that in there, but love the trust, and he still got it there. So at the end of the day, like, he trusts his arm and he's going to make those throws, but just looked, I think, pretty comfortable overall in this offense with Chip. Not bad for the first go-around. Against a team of Patriots that, like, look, this is a team that was also a 4-win team last year. A lot of new for them, all those different things. But I think this is a team with some really good personnel, particularly in the front seven. We saw them give the offensive line a little bit of issues at different points throughout the games, particularly with the twists and the stunts. I think that's something that Jackson Powers-Johnson and DJ Glaze are going to be working on, and particularly the communication factor of it. Because, like, if you communicate that right, I think those two guys are good enough to be able to sort that out. Just at times we saw him getting beat, and on a couple of the sacks, I think at one point DJ got kind of just pushed right into him. Colton did get beat on that play as well. The puck had just collapsed on Geno all around him. But, not the greatest game from that standpoint for DJ and Jackson. He let a couple through, and then obviously has the penalty, the unsportsmanlike. Things got a little testy. You don't want to see that. Jackson's a guy that's had some issues with some penalties and stuff, but, like, he's a good kid. This staff's going to coach him up and get him right, and they're going to go back and watch the film, and that's going to, again, be that communication factor. And, like, let's not forget the fact that Jackson came in thinking he was going to be a center, so he still is even adjusting to playing guard, even though he did a lot of it last year too. So I think that's just something to keep in mind, that it's still new and a new system for him in year two. So give him some time. It's definitely not time to go turn to anybody else. Like, Jackson is the best interior offensive lineman I think that they have on this team. And I think he's going to show that. And you did see that on Ashton's touchdown run as well. Not only did Jackson fare very well against Christian Barmore and open up a hole for Ashton to be able to keep going, but also Jordan Meredith at center. That was one. Go back and watch the tape. He had a really good job in terms of like chipping on the tackle who was there with Parham. And then he locates Robert Spillane real fast. Like, you see the eyes, like, bam, he found him as Spillane was just barreling downhill in run defense to try and stop Genty. And he gets in there and kicks him out. And again, Genty goes and shows the contact balance to keep his feet and work his way into the end zone for the score. I think it was really big for Genty to be able to rip the Band-Aid off and get it in there. Obviously, not the greatest day in terms of stats on the ground. You want to see more out of him, going forward, and I think that's more in line with the offensive line. Like, you want to give him more room to run and room to work. I thought when the holes were there, he took advantage of them, especially early on in the game. But then you saw the aggressiveness of that Patriots defense really kind of take over and, was stuffing him at the line and things like that. So I think that's something that'll develop as it goes on, as we see him continue to get more work and stuff. But one thing that did stand out to me, even though the running game wasn't there, was the fact that the Raiders had a lot of success in the play-action passing game. That was something that was really working for them in this game and something they can hang their hat on going forward. I thought it was good that Chip stuck with that, even though things weren't quite going their way in the running game. This is, again, a very aggressive Patriots defense. And, their front seven was biting on a lot of those fakes, and that's where Geno was able to convert on a lot of those deep passes and stuff like that. So really big to be able to do that. I think it showed a comfortability as a coach and a play caller in Chip to stick with it, even if it's not there. And again, as the game wore on, it really worked for them. And I also, like I said, I just really like the fact that Geno was able to spread it around and really be that field general and find his guys. Again, the connection between him and Brock is going to be the one to watch. But he also showed that he's going to throw the ball a lot to Michael Mayer. We did see a lot of 12 personnel. Michael Mayer made some really good plays. There was one in particular. This is more of a Geno play than a Mayer play. But Mayer finds a little soft spot in the zone as Geno's rolling left, looking for Genty out of the backfield. He stops, throws across his body, hits Mayer, and they pick up the first down. And that was another real critical point in the game, too. So was just really impressed overall with that. But again, Mayer stepping up, having a big day. Again, this offense is going to be loaded with 12 personnel. We did see Ian Thomas involved, too. I've said it many times throughout training camp that they are going to involve all three of these guys. They like them. I like that group as well. A lot of athleticism in that tight end room. So even when Brock does go down, they have two, I think, really good options in Michael Mayer, but also don't forget about Ian Thomas. Like I said, he's going to be involved in many different ways. He can line up in the backfield. He can line up, in the slot as receiver as well. Such a big body. They can throw him out there, in the red zone too, and maybe some jump ball situations. But just going to be fun to watch as that develops for this team. We also talked about the fact that you're going to get your first look at this Chip Kelly offense leading into this game here against the Patriots. As we mentioned, a lot of crossers, a lot of, motion and stuff at the line, making things easy on Geno to get some reads and, also making it tough on the defense as well, motioning across and you go opposite where, they replace and things like that. So was impressed with overall the offense. Again, not during that stretch of the 3 and outs, but as the game wore on, you could see the plan, coming together. And again, them really wanting to take advantage of the aggressiveness of this defense that the Patriots do have to really get that play action passing game going. And again, just really impressed with Geno. I mean, I think you go and look at it, and I believe the Raiders lost the time of possession battle. I'd have to go back and look at the stats, but I don't want to pull them up right now. But I believe they lost the time of possession battle. And you asked me or told me before the game that they were going to lose the time of possession battle, but win the game, I would have said you're crazy. I would have said there's no chance it's going to happen. So the fact that they were able to do that without winning the time of possession battle and not being able to run the ball, I would say, like, okay, that's impressive. And I think it is when you look at Geno's stat line and what he managed to do today. I mean, goes for over 350 passing yards. So impressive in a debut performance with so many new pieces around him and picking up a new offense. And that just goes to show you that Geno is a very underrated quarterback and is going to provide them with such better play than they had in years past. So that's a big win for them. And again, I know this is a Patriots team that has their issues. They didn't have Christian Gonzalez and all that stuff. And it is week 1, so take everything with a grain of salt. But all you have is what happened today. And if you walk away looking at this, you got to be walking away feeling real happy if you're a Raiders fan with what Geno Smith did wholesale. Again, aside from that, dry spell in the first half. But they made the changes at the half, which is something staffs here in Vegas have not been able to do over the years. So the simple fact that Pete and company were able to make their adjustments and go out there and show that they can put together an effective game plan moving forward in the second half after things aren't going well, that's huge. So be happy about that for sure going forward. Now let's go talk about the defense, because I thought there was a lot of interesting stuff to talk about there as well, particularly in the second half. they really stepped up and made some big, big, big plays. Okay, they had 8 pressures and 2 sacks and held Drake May to a passer rating under 50 in the second half alone. Those are just second half stats. On the day, they finished with 4 sacks overall. Look, the defense won the game in the second half. They completely shut down this Patriots offense. They had Drake May looking out of sorts. They shut down the running game. They only allow 60 rushing yards from the Patriots. We know Josh McDaniels wants to run the ball. Obviously, it didn't work for him when he was here in Vegas, when he was trying to run the ball, and it didn't work for him today here in New England as well. But we heard a lot about Travion Henderson. We know about Ramondre Stevenson. Those guys weren't able to get going, and it's mostly because of those guys in the front 7 that really stepped up for the Raiders today in this one. So again, really impressed with them, and we saw waves of guys getting in on the action too. Obviously, Max gets in there, and he had his day. Malcolm Kuntz gets a sack, and also, I believe, got credited with a forced fumble too. Really big for Malcolm Kuntz to be able to have a day like that, especially coming back from the injury in his first real game, because it was kind of a slow burn in training camp. So a nice little launching point for him to be able to show that he can kind of pick up where he left off, a couple seasons ago, as it really looked like he was on the rise, So big time for Malcolm Kuntz there in that regard. And then again, we saw, Thomas Booker as well gets a pass defense. I thought he looked good. He was fast at times too, chasing down screen passes and stuff like that. So was really impressed with his game. He's another guy, another versatile piece. Adam Butler is another guy that also is flying around. And then we saw Jonah Lulu and Tyree Wilson make some impacts as well. Both of them, I believe, getting in there with the sack. I know that Tyree got one. That one was an interesting play, actually. They had Max lined up inside, if I remember right. And Max goes and shoots the gap on the guard and forced Drake May to step up into the pocket. And then Tyree comes in, and it was an easy sack for him. So Max made that one happen. But again, big for Tyree to be able to get it on the outside. We've seen him move around all over the place, but I think moving Max inside to give him different angles and different guys to attack and all that stuff and use his speed against those guards is really good. And I like the looks that Patrick Graham is able to play with up there. So going to be interesting to see how that all kind of develops over the course of the season. But as I've noted many times, a very, very deep group up front by the Raiders. You got to be happy and pleased with what you saw out of them, particularly as the game wore on, taking advantage of this Raiders offense and an offensive line that had a handful of new starters, and they go and kind of impose their will on them going forward. Now let's move back to the guys behind on the linebackers. Obviously, Landon Roberts goes down with what Pete Carroll said was a dislocated elbow. That's a brutal one. I'm no doctor. I don't know what the timeline is going to be on that one, so stay tuned on that front. We'll keep you kind of posted as the days go on. I'm sure we'll have an update from Pete on Monday about that. But look, in the Landon's place, Tommy Eichenberg gets some burn. But I think the guy that made the biggest splash overall was Devin White. To me, he was one of the most impressive Raiders, right behind Geno Smith, obviously, in the day that he had. But in the first half, I was so impressed with what I saw out of Devin White, and even in the second half as well, particularly in the run game. He comes away with 11 tackles on the day. That led the team, has 1 tackle for a loss, but just showed such explosiveness, was sticking that foot in the ground and just reacting right away. And that was a guy that was flying around to me. I'd like to see him get a lot more work at Mike for the Raiders if Landon Roberts isn't healthy long-term, if that injury does look like something that's going to keep him out. So that's something I'm going to be interested to see, how it develops going forward for Devin White, because he's a guy that wanted to show the world that he's still that guy. I think today was a good step in the right direction to be able to show people that he can do that. So again, we talked to him too, actually, on Friday, I believe it was, and he said he enjoys the versatility that this defense, forces him to show in his game, and that he has played all 3 of those linebacker spots, and obviously puts that on display again today here being called upon. I'm not a huge fan of the depth that the Raiders have, I think, overall across the board outside of the defensive line, but the fact that he was able to jump in there and spell them when Landon Roberts goes down, I think is huge. And Matt, big for this team just going forward to be able to do that because Landon's a big part of this team, and obviously he's the green dot, makes the play calls for him on defense as well. So big there. I wanted to see a little bit more of Jamal Adams. We did see him as a blitzer at times. That's where he excites me most, coming off the edge there and the different looks he can provide there. But I thought he was effective in small bursts too. Obviously, wait and see what the diagnosis is on Landon Roberts, and then that'll dictate how much maybe Jamal is in the mix. But again, another very interesting piece. And I thought Tommy Eichenberg played well too. He was flying around. He was a guy that didn't really impress me a ton in the preseason, but today I thought when he was out there, looked good. So that's a solid one for the Raiders linebackers. Again, going forward, they're going to be tested more in coverage. We saw it at times here, but that's going to be the biggest thing for them. We know these guys can stop the run. It's just going to be what happens next. In particular, too, one thing with the coverage, I thought Jermaine Pratt, I believe it was against Hunter Henry in coverage, looked real good, had great coverage on him, And it was just a really good ball by Drake May. We were all sitting up there in the press box like, wow, what a throw he made there. And he had a couple of those today, in particular. Now let's go back to the guys on the back end. Speaking of Drake May making good throws, that touchdown pass to Douglas, I don't think there was a whole lot that Jeremy Chin could have done on that particular play. The coverage really wasn't bad. He was playing the hands. I think he was just a little late to get in there and try and knock it away. It was just one hell of a pass by Drake May to be able to string it in there and get that thing in there for the touchdown. But overall, was impressed with the coverage by the DBs too. Like I always say, like, it is a game of rush and cover, for anybody in football. And the rush was definitely there for the Raiders, particularly as the game wore on. So that makes things easier on the guys on the back end. But I was really impressed with what I saw out of Caillou Blue-Kelly. In coverage, obviously that fourth down, he picks up the pass interference. There's no way in the world that was pass interference. Caillou Blue-Kelly made a hell of a play on the ball, was looking for the ball. You talk to anybody out there that watched the replay, I bet you even people on the Patriots would say that's not actually a pass interference call. And it was very clear after the fact Caillou didn't want to get fined or anything like that. But, he felt he played the ball really well as well, too. So I think he showed a lot of big things, gave this staff a whole lot of confidence in him that they already had, because we saw the fact that they held him out of the last preseason game to make sure his hamstring was ready to roll. And I don't believe Darian Porter took any snaps at corner throughout this game. So, he showed he's got that on lock. Obviously, that's something that we'll be monitoring because this staff really does like Darian Porter. And he got tons of snaps on special teams. And Pete likes playing young guys. And Caillou is still a young guy, too. But let's be real, Darian Porter was built in a lab for Pete Carroll and fits his mold perfectly. So, again, that bears something to watch going forward. But today, what Caillou Blue-Kelly did, look, he has 9 tackles, 1 pass defense. One hell of a day for him in his first action as a starter. And you also cannot not be happy for the guy. He's been cut by multiple teams. He's a Vegas kid, so getting this opportunity with what's his hometown team now, too, just really big. You can see the fire and the energy that he plays with and just throws his body in there on tackles outside there on the edge. And that's something that they need. Over the years, they haven't had corners that have been willing tacklers. He is definitely a guy that will do that. And I thought overall, too, Eric Stokes fared really well. Also, he's a guy that I thought looked good throughout training camp, but today, aside from a couple passes here and there, I didn't think he was too bad. So I think you can feel pretty good about this defense as a whole. We see Isaiah Polamalu come through with the interception as well. Obviously, Drake May throws the errant pass and stuff and didn't make Isaiah have to work a ton for it, but still got to give him credit for coming down with it. He had the interception in the preseason as well. Gets it done here today. They balance out the turnover battle. So that's just a win overall, for the Raiders defense to be able to come away with a turnover, because that is something we saw them struggle with, over the years as well. I'm trying to think of any other things that I had, particularly on my notes that I really wanted to get to. I think that was it for the most part. But I think for you guys as Raiders fans, you just got to leave being happy with what you saw. We talked about it with JT the Brick, before the season started in our Thursday podcast. And he said, he's not really into these must-win games, quote unquote. And it's crazy to say that week 1 was a must-win game. And I don't think that it was. But man, it was very clear, this was a big game for them with Pete coming in and wanting to start fast and all the, compete things and stuff that he's pushing there. And for them to be able to come away with a win out of the gates, to come from behind, do it in hostile territory. I'm up in the press box. Obviously, we know how crazy New England fans are. They're all standing up. They're loud the entire time, So I think coming in here and doing that, it can't be understated, even though this is a team, both of them were 4-13 teams, but even though this is a 4-win team from last season with a whole lot of new of their own, to be able to come in here and do that, no win in the NFL is an easy one. And today was one they really had to work for. So, you got to be happy with the fight that this team showed and doing it the way that they did. Again, I mentioned, making adjustments at the half and doing things and fighting through stuff not working and still doing this. Again, I believe losing the time of possession battle, still being able to come away with a win and not being able to run the football when you have an Ashton Genty back there. So overall, you got to be stoked with what you saw out of them. Now the Raiders move along to go play the Chargers on Monday Night Football, another team who's 1-0. So that makes that game even more fun because it's 2 1-0 teams. The Chargers are one of those teams that on offensively, obviously with Jim Harbaugh on them, they want to run the ball. So the Raiders' run defense will be tested once again, just like it was here today. I think that's a better group running the ball than this Raiders team is. So let's see how they fare there. And then also Justin Herbert. He's one of those quarterbacks that's done it over the years, and he's got some good weapons. So it's going to be a tall task for this team. And one of those things, too, that I always do say is, you don't really know what you're going to get out of these Raiders-Chargers games. So I'm excited to see how both teams come out. And, again, it's Monday Night Football. That's just so much fun. And then, defensively, the Chargers were actually a very underrated group, I think, from that most people view them. So I'll be curious to see how the Raiders offense fares against them. But man, that sets up to be another really good game. And look, if the Raiders figure out a way to win that, all of a sudden they're 2-0, getting set to go back on the road to play the Commanders and Jaden Daniels, and who knows what happens there. So things obviously it's not to get ahead of ourselves here, but 1-0 out of the gates, winning in the fashion that they did. There's a lot of really good things the Raiders can walk away with. There wasn't like, aside from some of the blitz pickup and some of the coverage on the tight ends early on, there weren't any like glaring things where you're like, oh my God, this is going to be such an issue for this team going forward. Again, I think the biggest thing, offensive line wise, figure out a way to get the run game going and clean up the pass protection, particularly on the stunts and particularly on the right side there between JPJ and DJ Glaze. But I think they're going to work on that. They'll sort that stuff out. But again, overall, big day for the Raiders. Big day for us here at Silver and Black Sports Network. This is our first road trip of the regular season, obviously the first chance to do it. We'll be on the road the first couple of games here, and it's exciting, man. It was cool being here, in Foxborough. It was the first time for me coming to New England, be able to see this, see the fans, the atmosphere, all of that. And again, we saw one heck of a game. So just an awesome time all around. And again, I want to thank you guys, all of you guys, for listening in. Anybody that tried to listen and saw the audio issues before, this is a reshoot of the podcast. So hopefully everything worked through fine. I'm not trying to shoot this thing 3 times, but hey, if I have to, we will, because I love talking ball. We'll make it happen. But before we do close this out, as I always mention, guys, if you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, please go check out silverandblacksportsnetwork.com and do subscribe to the newsletter. We've got our one for Monday cooking here. We're going to get rolling on that in just a little bit. We'll be releasing that Monday morning at 6 a.m. with a bunch of nuggets from the games and a little bit more of a deep dive, look ahead to next week too. But really looking forward to that. And again, sign up at silverandblacksportsnetwork.com. If you pay the $6 a month, that gives you access to all 3 of our newsletters, or you can sign up for just the free version. That's a great way to support us. That'll give you the Friday version of the newsletter that is chock full of so many different Raiders nuggets and my insider access and analysis on this team too. So please do check it out. And again, thank all of you guys for watching and listening on whatever platform it is that you guys do take us in on. And this was week 1. It was fun. Can't wait to be back in Vegas. We'll be doing it again on Monday Night Football against the Chargers as the Raiders try to move to 2-0. Thanks again for listening, guys. We'll catch you next time.